Hello, UYWI. I'm Marvin Daniels, the Executive Director of the Hope Center in Kansas City, Missouri. We live in a culture of contradictions. When I go to the doctor, he's telling me how I ought to make sure that I diet in such a way that it produces health, but I notice that he's overweight. Or the dentist, where you go to get your teeth fixed and repaired, and you notice something that the dentists also need their teeth repaired. Or the barber who's cutting your haircut, but he also needs a haircut. Or the politicians that wants to legislate morality while living immoral. Or preachers that may preach the gospel text but refuse to live it. We're just in a culture of contradiction. But the good news is that Jesus continues to remind us of the importance of what it really means to be disciples, not just individuals that hang out with Jesus, but those who are truly disciples. In Luke chapter 14, 25 through 33, Jesus helps the crowd understand who ought to be following him because there were several that were there. Several that were there because they were amazed at his teaching, just like we are today, where individuals fall in love with a preacher's gift, but don't know or ignore how they may actually live. We get mesmerized in that way, and people were mesmerized by Jesus. Others understood his power and his authority because he fed 4,000 and 5,000 respectively. And they knew that if Jesus can do it then, that whatever their issues might be, Jesus can also provide for them. Or just those who understood that this was going to be the Messiah and that he was going to come into power. And so others might have been looking for a hookup. Either way, for whatever reason why people were following Jesus, he turned to them, the scriptures tell us, and said, if any one of you are going to follow after me, he must first of all deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. That's unique in this culture today because Jesus says, first and foremost, if you're going to be my disciple, if you're going to follow after me, it's going to require you to make me number one. I got to be number one in your life. Too often do we two-time Jesus with other relationships. And he says, if you're going to be my disciple, then I got to be number one in your life. I wear this ring because my wife and I have been married for 28 years, and it's supposed to let all the other women out there know that Marvin Daniels is off limits. But just in case, because this is the year 2000s, people ignore that. And so the second thing you ought to do is to remind Marvin Daniels, you're off limits. There's a covenant commitment that has taken place. Jesus says, if you're going to follow after me, it will require a covenantal relational commitment with me. I got to be number one in your life. Secondly, he reminds them that not only do I need to be number one in your life, but I also need you to understand that if I'm going to be number one, then you're going to have to be secondary. In other words, you're going to have to take up your cross. Cross, again, is more than just a tattoo that person puts on their body or even jewelry that they put around their neck. A cross always meant death, that it always remind us that there was going to be a one-way trip with the cross. It will always tell us and remind us that death ensues. You know what he tells us? There are things in our life that we have to put to death. People like that. People who have problems with drugs, problems with smoking, problems with other life-controlling problems. Jesus says, if you're going to follow after me, you're going to have to put those things to death. Those that can't seem to keep their zipper up or their panties up, Jesus says, if you're going to be my disciple, it's going to require you to do so. Or even those who are liars. People like that. Every time they open their mouth and tell you something, you look at them and you say, he lying. They have to put that to death. Everything that we're talking about is putting the activities and actions, if we're going to follow Jesus, we have to submit them to the cross so they can be put to death. He concludes his time in Luke chapter 14 by just reminding them that they are salt. And he tells them that because they're salt, if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer useful. It can't even be used for the dung pile. Now, if we was on the street, we use another term. But Jesus wanted you and I to understand something, that if you and I are going to follow after him, he wants us to make sure our identity in him is what represents him. You see, this salt, if I was to take this salt and put it and sprinkle it on a piece of chicken, I wouldn't say the salt tastes chickeny. If I put this salt and sprinkle it on carrot, I wouldn't say the salt tastes carroty. No, I would say the chicken tastes salty or the carrot tastes salty because the salt has the influence upon the chicken and the carrot. The chicken and the carrot doesn't influence the salt. You and I are called to make our culture different because of who we are as his salt. If you're going to be a follower after Jesus and you're going to also interrupt the culture of contradiction, we're looking for individuals who will no longer lose their flavor.